There's two things I've learned as a minister that I need. One is having that retreat day like Jesus this week and last week, getting that experience of being on his own just with God. But the other thing is music. And so what I try to do when I'm in the office, and hopefully usually by myself, and if I don't have any calls or anything like that to do, I like to have some music on while I'm working. Usually, I turn to one of these, free internet sources you can go to nowadays and listen to songs you may not necessarily have ever listened to before or even own. There was a song that came up this week, and it was one I have to admit that wasn't my favorite, but I looked down and saw the title. I thought, yeah, this about sums it up for me. And the title was this: Lost, Scared, and Tired. And many of you may be feeling this way too. Lost, scared, tired. And feeling that way may make it hard for you to realize where God is right now. It might make it even hard for you to hold on to your faith. So this is where Peter comes in as usual, and whenever it comes to something stupid, whether said or done, we usually see this with Peter. And it's easy for us to look at Peter and just go, what is going on with you, man? What are you doing? It's even harder for us to often admit that all the stupid things that Peter says and does are the exact same things that each and every one of us has done from time to time. But fortunately, we have the example of Peter to look on to see where we fall short, to see where we can improve. And so there in the gospel story today, we've got the disciples on the boat with the winds all about them. All of a sudden, they see what they think is a ghost walking on the water. Fortunately for them, it turns out just to be Jesus. And so Peter here, of course, decides that, why don't I try to do this too? And so he does. He goes out and walks on the water until he realizes just how hard the winds are blowing. And he starts to slowly sink, calling out for help. The thing is that Jesus is right there with him this whole time. Yes, Peter may be falling. And Peter may be doing this only because of his stupidity and, frankly, lack of faith. But even with all of that, Jesus is still there, right there next to him, ready to reach his arm out and pull Peter back. What happens here is very much like what Paul says in Romans, or rather, what he quotes in Romans from Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 14. The word is very near you, on your lips and in your heart. The word is very near you. In other words, when we're lost, scared, and tired, God is right there with us. God is there to help us when we fail and when we start to sink into the mire. Even when we've lost all hope, even when it feels like our faith is failing us, God is there to help restore that hope. God is there to help us restore our faith. God is always there, even when we don't realize it. the comfort we have too is that we are not the only ones who fall and fail sometimes. That's what we see in Peter. So we should never look unfavorably on Peter, even when he does silly and stupid things, and even when he says silly and stupid things. Because we've all been there. We've all been Peter, whether we like to admit it or not. And so it's helpful to have that hope, to have that example to look onto, to have that example to say, yeah, that's me, or yeah, that's been me sometimes. I've done that too. It helps us to have that solidarity. And also have that example so that we say, maybe I should stop doing this sometimes. Maybe I should have a little bit more faith. Our comfort, too, is that we are not the only ones in the midst of this pandemic who are seeking God. We're not the only ones that are trying to figure out where God is at this time. During the first week of the pandemic, during that first week, I looked back on our service at Resurrection, and looking at the numbers, we had about 600 people. That was more than the baptized members, let alone the average Sunday attendance for the church. And you might think, wow, that's amazing, but what about us? Well, I looked it up here too. That first week of the pandemic, we had 270 people watching. That's phenomenal for our church. That's a sign that even when we're separated, even when all we can do is view this service and be with each other online, people are still reaching out. People are still seeking God. People are still looking for hope. The hope we have is that as we're searching for God, we don't have to look very far. Because God is right here. God is right here with us now, ready for each and every one of us to find him. God is there, ready to stretch out his arm to us, especially in those moments when our faith may falter. So when we are lost, or scared, or tired, when we find ourselves sinking and need somebody to lift us back up, we have nothing to worry about. Even when we lack faith, we have nothing to worry about. Because God is there. God is very near. And God is ready to pick us back up again. God is here, present with us now, to help us in these troubled times and always.